want to start at the start, the very beginning, really exploring a very brief but extensive deep dive into the history of plants and people and the way we have evolved along with the earth. I want to sort of have you when I'm exploring this historical part of the course really be thinking about where you come from, where your lineage is, what part of the planet did your ancestors come from, what sort of soil was there, what sort of trees, what was the climate like, thinking about how we have evolved individually by these worlds that we inhabited for thousands of years and the way that that has created who we are now. So in looking back, really kind of learning not just about our relationship to the planet, but our relationship to ourselves. Before the first temple rose, before the first word was carved into clay, there was the green breath of earth. Long before humans looked up to the stars or drew symbols in the dust, the ancient kingdom of plants had already begun shaping the ground we walk on and the air that we breathe. Ours is not a story of dominion over plants. It is a story of co-emergence, of partnership, of breath for breath, root for rib, body for body. The world's first plants arrived on land over 430 million years ago during the Silurian period, when the Earth's continents were still merging and breaking, and most life was still clinging just to the waters and the seas. These early terrestrial pioneers, tiny leaflets organisms known like Quoxania is one of the names, emerge from the green algae and push their way onto soil, transforming bare rock into the first fragile landscapes of green. With them came a miracle, photosynthesis, the first botanical alchemy that gave us oxygen, food, and climate. Before human language, before ritual, before memory, plants were speaking, quietly crafting the very conditions for life. From these small beginnings grew the towering forests, the massive ferns, the seed-bearing trees that laid the coal beds that we still mine today. Fungi, too, were here, often dismissed as neither plant nor animal, but early architects of the soil, breaking down minerals, forming symbiotic relationships with roots, a cooperation that continues today in every forest, floor, and garden plot. It was plants, fungi, mosses, and microbes that wove the first fabric of Earth's ecosystems, and that continue even now to breathe life into our planet each and every day. For early humans, hunter-gatherers, foragers, nomads, the world was not a set of resources to be extracted from, but a living cosmos animated by spirit. Nature was both provider and presence. The forest had a soul. The tree had intention. The flower had medicine, message, and memory. Among the world's oldest spiritual systems, animism, shamanism, nature worship, the plant world was holy. Plants fed, healed, clothed, and sheltered. But more than that, they revealed the spiral of a vine, the opening of a blossom, the intoxicating smell of certain roots or flowers. These were understood not merely biologically, but mythically. Plants were portals. They connected this world to others. They marked burial sites and sacred thresholds. They appeared in dream and trance states. And many, like mushrooms, did more than symbolize the divine. They introduced it directly. Consider the Stone Age images of flowers etched into cave wall or carved mushrooms buried in Neolithic grave sites. From prehistoric altars to later mythic systems, plant imagery abounded. Plants symbolize fertility, transformation, resurrection, the divine feminine, the cycles of the season, the mystery of death and return. Long before the alphabet, the leaves told stories. Across early civilizations, plants were absorbed into cosmology. They didn't merely adorn temples, they were sacred themselves. In ancient Egypt, the blue lotus rose from the Nile's murky waters each dawn and closed each night. This daily bloom mirrored the resurrection of the sun god Ra, who emerged from underworld to light the day. The lotus thus became a symbol of rebirth, of grace, and spiritual enlightenment. In Mesoamerica, water lilies held sacred meaning for the Maya, associated with sexuality, fertility, and divine power. Elsewhere in the region, the Aztecs revered mushrooms, particularly the psychoactive variety or the flesh of the gods. These fungi were used in shamanic rites to access other realms, to seek healing, and speak with the ancestors. To the Celts and Druids of ancient Europe, the oak tree was a living god, embodying strength, endurance, and divine wisdom. Groves of trees were considered natural temples. Specific species, birch, rowan, holly, each holding particular powers. The sacredness of trees was part of an early alphabet that named its letters after trees. To the ancient Greek, the pomegranate, dark and jewel-like, symbolized both fertility and the underworld. It was said to have sprung from the blood of Adonis, the young god of beauty slain by a boar, and it plays a central role in the enduring myth of Persephone, whose consumption of 6 pomegranate seeds bound her to Hades and helped to explain Earth's circular cycle, spring as return, winter as loss. The Romans, inheriting an expanding Greek tradition, honored Flora, the goddess of the flowers, in a festival of blooms, of fertility and renewal. Even their architecture and mosaics are filled with plant motifs: vines, ivy, wheat, olives, symbols not just of agriculture, but of spirit. All these stories were not decorative, they were instructions. They explained why the world was the way it was. Plants guided rites of passage, healing, and sacrifice. A tree could be your guardian, a flower could be an offering, a vine could carry your prayers to heaven. In this mythic worldview, plants were never neutral. They were charged with power, with presence, and spirit. A single flower could represent the cycle of birth, death, and resurrection. A root could hold ancestral memory. A forest could contain gods. The idea of sacred plants, of ethnogens, meaning the generating of the divine within, is not a modern concept. It is a primordial one. And always the relationship was reciprocal. Humans took only what they needed. They gave thanks, they made offerings, they asked for permission. To take a plant without reverence was to risk spiritual imbalance or even illness. Plants, like people, were beings. Even in the myths that explained human origin, plants appear not as separate from humanity, but as essential to it. In some Andean myths, people are said to have been born from the maize. In Zulu stories, humans emerged from the reeds. In Hawaii, the taro plant is the elder sibling of the first human child. These are not metaphors. They are expressions of a different worldview, one where plants and people are kin. This idea, which modern Western science is only beginning to revisit through ecological theory and ethnobotany, was known instinctively by our ancestors. It shaped how they hunted, how they planted, how they healed, how they prayed, and how they lived. The relationship was not utilitarian. The relationship with nature was sacred. From this symbiosis, a pattern emerged, one that would repeat across every culture and every era. The sacred grove, the flower at the heart of the mandala, the fruit with forbidden knowledge, the vine climbing toward heaven, the hallucinogenic mushroom as a path to the gods, the tree as a map of a cosmos. It begins here in the soil of early earth and the dreams of early humanity, not as separate pieces, but as relatives, plant and person, root and mind, life creating life. What we now call ecology, our ancestors once called sacred law. What we now term myth, they experienced as daily truth. To understand where we're going as a species, we must first remember where we came from and how we came to live not upon the earth, but with it.